Hi, Max Brantley with the Arkansas Times. It's Friday the 13th of January. The cold air is moving back in. The horses are running at Oaklawn Park in Hot Springs. And the world is not exactly in good shape, but it's kind of slow news day today, probably because Monday is a holiday and government begins shutting down. The legislature, for example, is not meeting today, won't resume again until Tuesday, given what's happened so far. That might be a good thing when we talk about some of the new legislation. The governor seems to think there's going to be quick action on his plan to cut income taxes for low-income taxpayers by $50 million. It looks like the legislature may be falling in line with that in return for a promise to study reducing the income tax rate on higher income taxpayers in future years. A little bit surprising. I think it's a measure of what amount of power that Asa Hutchinson has assembled in government and as governor. I've written a column this week, unusual perhaps, praising him for a number of things he's done and the moderation he's shown on a number of issues. He's been better, I think, than a lot of Democrats expected from a Republican governor, and so for now we have that to be thankful for. I don't think we'll see an earned income tax credit, which Democrats have put forward as a better solution on the income tax, but there'll still be some benefits for poor people. I mentioned other legislation, and there's, as usual, a lot of bad things, and a lot of it probably will pass. Top of the agenda, given the timing of the holiday Monday, is the question of whether the legislature will finally end a dual observance of the birthdays of Martin Luther King, the civil rights leader, and Robert E. Lee, who fought to preserve slavery in the South. It's one of 3 states, Arkansas is, it still has this strange honor, but the League of the South and the defenders of the lost cause always rise up with great indignation when people propose to do away with the Lee holiday, and politicians are at their core, most of them, a pretty cowardly bunch. A few people shout, and they are reluctant to move forward. The House Speaker, Jeremy Gillum, has said his mind isn't made up yet. It should have been made up in the last session when this bill was defeated. It's a simple matter, really. It's not good for the state of Arkansas to be a place that still honors Robert E. Lee on a par with Martin Luther King, not if we expect to move into the frontier of states and economic development. Well, there's that, and then there's also guns. We do love our guns in Arkansas. Bart Hester, the extreme right-wing senator from Northwest Arkansas, proposes to honor the Second Amendment by declaring the first weekend in September, maybe it's the second weekend, is a sales tax holiday for the sale of guns and ammo. We don't need to encourage more gun sales in Arkansas. We have the 3rd highest rate of gun ownership in the country as it is. This is just plain and simple demagoguery. Why should we have special tax rates on any item? If we were going to give special tax rates that we want to encourage people to buy, why not books or pianos or trombones or pizza or some other things that don't necessarily cause death and destruction to people? But this legislature, again, is not likely to cross the gun lobby, so this may become law. It's picking up a trend that's been set in other states. Development on another issue that has been of interest to me. Clark Tucker, the Democrat from Little Rock, has been working for months on a bill to provide paid maternity leave of 6 weeks for state employees, for the women only, not for the husbands of the women who give birth. It's a good bill. It's rational employment policy. Most decent employers try to do that if they can. Well, yesterday a couple of Republican legislators came up with a bill to try and steal some thunder from Tucker. It's official Republican Party policy, apparently, to try and keep Clark Tucker from passing any legislation because he's viewed as a rising star, not that he can get much done given the minority. Their bill would allow employees to donate days of the catastrophic leave bank, and then if there are enough days there for the various pregnant women, they could take some of the days out and use them for 4 weeks of paid leave. Maternity would be designated as a catastrophic event. I think if an employer is going to have a good employment policy, and it should provide paid maternity leave, it shouldn't ask its other employees to pay for it by giving up some of their benefits. Elsewhere at the Capitol yesterday, the State Board of Education, to nobody's surprise, approved continuing permits for 3 open enrollment charter schools in Pulaski County. One of them, Little Rock Preparatory Academy, has always had abysmal test scores. It's never failed to hit proficiency level on tests, and it doesn't show much progress. But Diane Zook, a board member who has fought for the state takeover of the Little Rock School District because a couple of its schools have low scores, said we have to understand this is a school that tries to reach poor minority children from poor families with a lot of difficulties, and they're hard to educate. Well, that was exactly the point, Mrs. Zook, when the people tried to say about the Little Rock School District when you took it over and took away our elected representation. The schools in Little Rock that are having trouble face exactly the difficulties Little Rock Prep does, and actually do a better job with their students than Little Rock Prep does. does. But being a charter school in Arkansas now means you never have to say you're sorry. Being a member of the Little Rock School District means you get whatever Johnny Key and the Walton Foundation wants to cram down your throat. They're going to ask us in March to approve a school bond refinancing proposal. It's not a millage rate increase, but it'll commit taxpayers to 14 years of additional tax payments amounting to at least $500 million to improve the schools. They probably need the improvement, but we don't have any representation, and we have no promises from Johnny Key that he's not going to continue to ruin the schools by expansion of charter schools, many of which don't get the job done as well as the Little Rock School District does. I've never voted against a school tax increase, but I'm having a hard time struggling with this one because we can't get any assurances that the people that want us to pass this tax don't intend to keep hammering the Little Rock School District with unfair policies and double standards of educational enforcement. Gee, I didn't sound very happy about that, did I? Sorry. Let's be happier. Go to YouTube and look up Late Night with Seth Meyers and catch a nice interview he had with Mary Steenburgen, the North Little Rock native. She talks about coming home to Little Rock with some friends on her TV show to celebrate her Aunt Frida's birthday at South on Main restaurant. It's a nice little piece. It'll make you feel good. Your heart might lift up at the news that it looks like there might be a bigger crowd at the march the day after inauguration next week, the Women's March, where they're going to have all the pink pussy hats. Then they're going to have the inauguration itself, at least if you go by the number of bus slots that have been reserved for parking on Inauguration Day versus Women's March Day. That'll make quite a sight. It won't make Donald Trump happy. The news about some intelligence reports on him that put him in an unflattering light have sent him to Twitter in a rage today. It's kind of fun to read. And speaking of rages, the Washington Post has picked up the story about the school board member in Blevins, Arkansas, who wore blackface, a minstrel-like costume on Halloween, and hasn't been very apologetic about it. The Post notes that at the meeting last week where he got a little award for being an outstanding school board member, a number of people there wearing shirts that said, "I stand with Ted." That would be Ted Bonner, the school board member dressed up in blackface, and doesn't really seem to think he did anything wrong about that. The Post article, you ought to look it up on the Arkansas blog, is interesting because it gives you a history of the minstrel depiction in America and how clearly it's meant to be an ugly racial stereotype. And if you're not smart enough to understand that it's meant as a demeaning racial stereotype, maybe you haven't quite prepared yourself well enough to be a school board member after all. I do wonder, it made me think about this King Lee bill, and if it does finally come, are we going to see a committee room at the Capitol full of people with t-shirts on saying, "I stand with Bob Lee"? Perhaps. Let's hope not. I'm Max Brantley. I'll be back next week.